January 4th, 2022, and at 1:30 p.m. You're at a Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting. Welcome, everyone. Everyone on the commission is present. We do have Commissioner Robinson virtually joining us. And the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2021 meeting. Yes, Mr. Force.
I do have a couple comments.
Okay, would you mind if I accepted a motion and a second first?
Yep.
Do I have a motion? A motion by Herbst and a second by Jean. Yes, Mr. Force.
Okay. In item 3, at the bottom of the first page, John Robinson is talking about the federal Build Back Better bill, and that's not pointed out. The sentence reads, he stated there is talk about a 30% credit for entities from the 1.7 trillion proposal currently being discussed. I think that should be clarified as the $1.7 trillion federal Build Back Better proposal. Okay?
Okay, if there's no objection, I think we can make sure that we clarify that, no problem.
Okay, and then one other point, there's reference to the geotech, which I assume we're talking about the geology in the property to the north of the construction site at the water plant. Mm-hmm. At some points, that word geotech is capitalized as if it's a company, and I don't think we mean that. I think it should be a lowercase g. Sure. The word geotech is not. I'm not familiar with that, but I assume that means the geological structure of that property to the north. But there are a few references in the rest of the minutes also to geotech. I just think we should clarify that.
Mr. Robinson?
That should be geotechnical investigations.
Okay, we can clarify that. That's no problem.
That's good.
Any other comments or needs? Yes.
In the per forma on that section should be pro forma.
Okay.
And in the last portion of that section 3, it says pro forma on the ARPA funding, pro forma and the ARPA funding.
Yes, pro forma.
Pro forma. We're looking for the financials.
Yes.
And not on.
Yep. Okay, no problem clearing that up too. Mr. Jean.
Under item 4, did we get quotes, or has that been completed or not? It's the pipe and fitting.
I think the quotes are coming in this week. Yeah, we don't have the numbers yet. Yep.
Okay, if there are no more questions or comments about the minutes, all of those in favor of approving the minutes as clarified can signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. We'll move on now to item number 2, the director's report. I will flip it over to you, Eric.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor. I think if any of the commissioners have specific questions on any of the items underwater or wastewater, we're happy to clarify or
I have a question, generic question relative to the vacancies in our recruitment policies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So specifically,
go ahead.
Are we looking at non-traditional ways of advertising vacancies and trying to develop internships and other opportunities to bring in non-traditional applicants? It seems like many of these positions have been typically held by white males, and maybe we need to give some thought to how we could be more aggressive in finding some non-traditional applicants for some of these positions, and that may involve creating internships and or training opportunities just to get people into the system. Because I think it's a problem that is not unique to this utility, but rather is taking place throughout society.
I can respond to that. It seems like 2 parts, John. So one is we are looking at alternatives like writing a different job description for more of a less responsibilities, more of an entry-level position, and then train an individual up. Internships we're looking at too, and that's department-wide as well. It's difficult because sometimes when you bring internships on and train them, by the time they get up to the point, if we don't have a full-time position available, then, you know, then we're starting over. We'll bring another intern in. And we have done that in our motor pool. We've brought an intern in. We hope that maybe at some point there'll be a vacant position when that individual becomes fully trained, but that's the challenge with the internships. So, but we are looking at different options to bring people on.
Eric, does that include non-traditional applicants?
I don't,
You know, reaching out?
you'll have to clarify that, John, I'm not exactly sure.
Well, reaching out to women's groups and minority groups and others to see if we can entice them to apply. If we can't, if our applicant pool is so limited, then how do we expand our applicant pool?
Yeah, I can talk to HR about that. I know that we advertise in multiple locations, or they do. It's pretty widespread, but I can talk to them about that if they reach out to those specific groups.
I think too, just to butt in here, I talked to the Madison mayor, and one of the things they're doing in public works specifically is creating apprenticeships. They're partnering, and they are actually targeting women and kind of underrepresented groups. So I think that's something interesting that we can probably, you know, continue looking at too. I agree. We need all the people applying. Older Herbst.
Eric, just out of curiosity, I was really surprised to read that Oconomowoc, which is about half the size of Wausau, is able to offer quite a range of money per hour. Have you heard anything as to whether or not this is working for them, or why can't we offer more wages? I know
I think
what the
we
answer
have
would
a
be.
salary scale, and we would like to offer more within that salary scale, you know? I think that we've been trying to do that. We do run into issues with people that were hired 3-4 years ago. Bringing new people in and stepping over them is becoming an issue, and we have no mechanism to bring those existing employees up, you know, arbitrarily. So that's been a challenge for us. But I think I agree with you. I think that we will start down the path of another wage study and more customizable, I think, for the specific work that we're doing, and I think that will help. But in the interim, I think these other options, as well as looking at those higher rates, I think is the only way we're going to be competitive. So appreciate that, Don.
Mr. Jean?
I know that in the past, we've worked with UW Stevens Point with their water and wastewater program students.
Yep.
Just want to hope we continue that effort, because there's a potential for, maybe they wouldn't have the CDL, but we can work that out. But they come with other educational understanding of what we need.
That's correct, Joe. Yep. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Forrest.
And I would add to Joe's point, are we working with North Central Technical College at all?
We don't have any specific programs or anything, Jim. I know that they have a pre-engineering program, which under the engineering division, we've reached out to them, you know, for internships and things like that, but nothing, you know, very specific.
I mean, would it make sense for us to approach them about a water wastewater curriculum? They seem to be doing, number one, they seem to be looking for students, just like all schools are. And they also seem to have a range of programs that are designed to meet area needs.
Can definitely reach out to them. That's a good idea. I appreciate all these ideas.
Okay.
I
And
do.
one other point, I remember in one of our previous discussions about this issue, we talked about this requirement of the commercial driver's license. Is that still an issue? When I read here that we didn't receive any interest from applicants who met the qualifications, is that CDL the qualification that they don't meet?
It could have been some of them. You know, I mean, we don't get to see all the applicants. They're vetted at HR first, and so they determine minimum qualifications. So we don't see those applications if they don't meet.
Yeah, I don't recall where this was, but it seemed to me I was reading about a similar problem in a similar industry where the CDL was offered to applicants, so that they would qualify for the job. In other words, there was a mechanism available to applicants to get their CDL so that they would qualify for the position. But if we're not doing that, and there is no way for them to get the CDL, or there's no way of our facilitating that process, it seems like we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I think with the new regulations on CDL that are coming out, we are working with HR, and I think for this year anyway, we don't have anybody in-house that's trained, to provide those courses and that coursework, which is something we hope to do, but I think that there are contractors out, and NTC is one of them that has a program.
Right.
There's also some private entities that will actually come in and train up to 12 people at a time. And so one of the job descriptions that we've changed is looking at doing, getting a CDL within 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, to kind of eliminate that requirement up front. And then we would provide that training and that opportunity.
Mr. Cheen?
On a different subject, the number of locates that have occurred this last year in comparison to the year before, is TDS pretty well done, but you'd hope that these numbers would start going down? I assume that's where they're coming from.
They are done with all their mainline installations, but now they're doing the drops to the homes. So we probably will see for the next couple of years a significant either increase or it'll stay the same as what we have. And I didn't want to keep pushing the locates, but at the number we have there, even at a half hour per, that's over 2 full-time people.
I understand your point.
Okay, any other comments or things we need to cover with the report? All right, I am not seeing anybody. So we'll move on to item number 3, discussion and possible action on project priority updates, for the water and wastewater budgets.
So, as all of you know, we go through the capital budgets early in the year, and I think that was June, July of '21. Since that time that the budgets were initially approved, we have had a inflow infiltration study which was completed, which identified some priority areas for us to do some work in. We've had a couple mandates from the DNR with the lead service line issues coming up for the lead service line replacement plan, as well as the corrosion control study that has come. So I made some adjustments on the capital plan, both in the borrowing section as well as the operating section. As you can see in my memo, the overall budget is staying fairly the same, but we added a few projects and made adjustments on other projects. So, and those are highlighted in the budget. So, and being as these are changes, I have brought this forward for approval and review and approval by the commission.
Okay, I guess at this point I would entertain a motion unless I have a motion by Jean. I have a second by Herbst. Okay, comments?
Just one question, Eric, on
Lots of comments.
future borrowing. What's going on with interest rates in terms of any trends that we should be aware of?
I am not sure, Jim. I couldn't speak to that.
Okay.
I'd have to have Mary Ann send an update on what she's seeing as far as our borrowing.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Jean.
The 14-inch on, what the heck, is it Elm Street? For between 14th and 17th? Is that part of that replacement of that old pipe that, there was at one point in time, and I can't remember if we got that information from a vendor, 14-inch pipe is an odd size. And I noticed we also have that for Bugby campus. And I think it drives up the price, but I don't recall the details of that. I know it was something back in 2005 or earlier that was brought up, so I'm just curious if you've given any consideration to change the size.
Typically, when we replace 14-inch, depending on required water needed in the area, we'll either go down to 12 or we'll move up to 18.
I think, yeah, it's a good question, Joe, because on the extension on Bugby and campus, that's actually going to 18 based on Becker Hoppy's analysis. So, yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else, or are we ready to vote? Okay. All of those in favor of approving the project priority updates for the water and wastewater budgets can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and we are moving on. Item number 4, discussion and possible action on approval of another 2-year contract with Hydrocore.
So as you know, Hydrocore is our cross-connection control consultant, and they basically manage and maintain our program for us and have since 2016. So they are running on a 2-year contract and have been, and we would like to continue on with that based on the costs for the next 2 years.
Any questions? Mr. Jean?
I'll move to accept, and then
Okay, I have a motion to approve the request. Is there a second?
I'll
I
second.
have a second. Okay, yes, Mr. Jean?
I assumed it's for the 94,000 and some change is for the 2 years. I went through it twice. I couldn't find clarification for that other than your comments.
That is correct. It's not per year, that's for the 2 years.
And there was another line item that they do special, but they don't have anything written in there under the price. And maybe there may not be any need for that. I don't, it was kind of confusing to me. I know some of those people, they should be better jobs.
So on the pricing and
Yeah, right.
proposed
There's
fees,
nothing to go there, right?
initial inspections of 615 non-residential service connections.
I think that just clarifies their work. Right?
That's how I would take it. I can get clarification on that.
I can clarify it now. The 756 is going to be follow-up inspections, so if they go to places of business that are not compliant with cross-connection code, and they have to do a revisit, that takes it off of that second number, that 756. So they do the 615 original inspections, and then there's 141 odd inspections that they keep in reserve for revisits.
Oh, I see.
Do you want to turn your mic on?
That doesn't affect the 94,000 and 400 and some dollars, I don't remember.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
That's included.
Okay, any other questions? Mr.
Is this
Robinson?
a quick question? Is this a some certain or a time and material?
This is some certain, John.
And how does this price compare to what other communities are paying?
I don't know exactly what other communities are paying. I would assume more since Wausau has more volume. Hydrocore is typically the only company that does this in this area. There are some smaller ones that have been popping up, but originally in 2016, when we brought them in, they can do this for about a quarter of what we could do it in-house.
So their costs are in excess of $1,000 per inspection. It seems high. And that's including the initial inspections and the follow-up to 141 inspections. So how do we know, if we're sole sourcing this, how do we know the comparative value of this compared to other vendors?
I come up with $153.60.
Yeah, that 1,000 is
Yeah.
not right, John.
Yeah.
More
Okay,
like
I'm sorry. How much?
$153.60.
Per,
How does that compare to others?
We can't even roll a truck for that. By the time we add administrative costs, scheduling, contacting a homeowner, sending mailings, plus have a site visit with an employee, a truck, and some equipment.
Yes, Mr. Jean.
I just recall, before we went with this service, I think Weston was paying, I don't recall the number, but I think this is very reasonable based on my recall of what other communities were paying over the years. But it's been a little while since I've been doing this business.
Is there any other discussion or question? Okay. Nope, okay, all right, I guess at this point, we will take a vote on whether or not we accept the approval of another 2-year contract with Hydrocore. All those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. We are now moving on to item number 5, discussion between staff on the growing concerns related to PFAS and drinking water with the Wisconsin DNR. I don't know who wants to handle this one first, but I will.
Scott, you want to
Scott,
give a
there
little
you go.
history? Where we're at?
Okay. I guess in light of current area activity with the discoverance of PFAS in Wanneroo Mountains wells, and our building of a new plant, DNR has contacted us and requested that we sample for PFAS. We have done some preliminary sampling in the past 2019 in preparation of the new plant, but at that time, and still, there's no standards, and at that time, EPA was looking at a 70 parts per trillion standard. Our preliminary results did indicate some PFAS. There was some question on whether those results were contaminated. In fact, now they won't even accept those as sample results. So they've asked us to resample all of our wells and our 2 entry points for our finished water.
The samples that were taken in the past were only from our raw water?
Our raw water
Right.
samples
And
in
I-
the wells.
And I think you said the totals were 26 was the highest in one well?
Depending on what you were going to combine. For a
Right.
combined total, PFOA, PFAS, plus the other 4 candidates for adding on to that combined total. I think they were between 23 and 28 parts per
Okay.
trillion,
All right.
with some found in each well.
I saw, Mr. Jean, it looked like you were about to ask a question.
Are we drawing the samples, or are we hiring that out?
At that time, I have to check the chain of custody. It was between our engineer and one of our plant staff.
Because
When was that, Scott?
2019.
I just know it's quite delicate that you could easily contaminate the sample.
In fact, now they have changed a lot of the trip blank sampling and the protocols with the samples. That's why they don't put much faith in what happened or any sampling that was done in the past.
Mr. Robinson, it looks like you want to say something.
Thank you for noticing. First of all, the EPA has established a health advisory of 70 parts per trillion.
Yep.
The state is currently under reviewing and proposing a maximum contaminant, a limit of 20 parts per trillion. And based upon the 2019, we may be approaching that. Rib Mountain numbers were above the EPA's health advisory levels and clearly above any proposed standards. EPA is in the process of revising it based upon the information that I'm seeing. It looks like numbers will be coming down because of concerns over health impacts. So I think in light of the fact that Rib Mountain has found PFAS in their water, I think as a measure to assure the public that their water is safe, we should do the sampling. And if you need a motion, I would make that motion.
I think we only have this on there for discussion, but your enthusiasm for this is noted. Are there any other comments that we'd like to share before? Moving on. You're agonizing.
Well, we shouldn't be talking about Rib Mountain because I don't know that that is public information.
I saw it in the Wausau
been
pilot.
on the
Oh,
news.
well, then okay.
What is the plan going forward then, Scott?
And that's kind of why we brought a lot of this up for conversation, because I don't think anybody knows. This is going to be uncharted territory. We have a new facility coming online in approximately 9 months, which can either remove some or be altered to remove more if necessary of the PFAS compounds. I don't know what happens if we discover we have a unadvised level or a level above the proposed standard in between that time. So our current plant and getting into the new facility, there's going to be a 9-month lag. I'm not sure. That's going to be uncharted. DNR doesn't know. I shouldn't say doesn't know. The conversations we've had, they haven't had any idea, because typically most municipalities that they've had in the past that have found PFAS have been a single well or a isolated spot. So they were able to shut the well down and do some sampling, do some testing, bring in some remediation, and still have a water supply. If everything runs consistent with our preliminary samples, we're going to not have a well that's probably going to be below that 20 parts.
All right, you talk about the new plant coming online in 9 months. Are you planning to sample wells between now and then?
Yes.
Okay, that was the gist of my question. As far as a plan going forward, we are going to be sampling our wells.
Correct.
And back to Joe's question, are we doing that, or is an outside firm doing it?
We can do it. DNR is all right with us doing it. The labs I've talked to said it was all right for us to do it. State Lab of Hygiene has a informational video out on how to do it for municipalities, so they're coming to the conclusion that operators generally can take the samples.
So will we be seeing results before, during the next 2 meetings, 3 meetings?
Results typically take a month.
So we might see some in February?
I would say probably,
March.
if we do it next week, it would be March.
March, okay. But I'm correct in assuming we don't know what the standard is going to be. John suggests it's coming down from the 120 and the 70 that we heard earlier today.
Yeah. And that's going to present another question to the commission. So the proposed standard is 20 parts per trillion. If it comes down and we alter plant treatment to meet 20 parts, and we have a plant that's 6 months old when they pass a 10 parts standard, then what? Or they decide that 20 parts is too rigid, and they come back with 40 parts, and we're treating to 10 or 20.
Is that going to be a federal or state standard, or both?
The state is, John, maybe you can correct me, but the state's trying to pass something prior to the EPA coming out with theirs.
The state is currently working on 3 different sets of standards, one for groundwater, one for surface water, and one for drinking water. Those are set at 20 parts per trillion. EPA is in the process of developing rules. They currently have that 70 parts per trillion health advisory for the state. All the numbers, again, are 20 parts. I've been tracking the numbers. There is increasing scientific information that raising concerns even at the 20 parts per trillion. I don't know where that's going. It's anticipated that EPA could have rules in 2023, 2024, but there are efforts to try to deal with it quicker in Wisconsin. So there's actually a hearing later this week on proposed one of those standards.
John, you're kind of our expert on this. Is there any evidence that's been established and affirmed regarding the health effects of PFAS? I haven't seen anything. The statement is made, it could be injurious to health.
There are a number of studies that link it to developmental issues, compromising the immune system, suppressing the ability of immunizations to work, and others. Europe is much farther ahead than the United States in the life of these materials, and has led the banning of certain products. So there are a number of studies that have been done. The Department of Health, the State Department of Health Services, and it made the recommendation for the 20 parts per trillion based upon their review of the scientific literature. And they used a toxicologist to develop that standard. So they're basing it on studies and information that's available.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments that we would, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing discussion for us, I believe. So if there's anything that we can prep for or look into. And is that hearing, Mr. Robinson, is that on Thursday? Is that what I'm to
Yes.
understand? Okay.
1 o'clock.
All right. Writing it down. Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, we can go ahead and move on to item number 6. Discussion and possible action on the sole source for purchase of magnesium hydroxide chemical for the wastewater treatment facility. I will maybe flip it over to Ben or someone.
I can take it. So this is a new chemical we're introducing at the wastewater plant, magnesium hydroxide. It's for alkalinity adjustment, and so basically pH adjustment. This came up actually in certain areas of the treatment plant construction project. The contractor's ahead of schedule, so we had to go ahead and get this ordered. And we had a tanker truck or so that have come in to fill up our storage with the mixer and stuff. And we have been using it on the adjustment while other improvements are being made in the aeration basins and stuff. So currently, we're using more than what we anticipate having to use, but at least for the next quarter until those are done. We did get a couple quotes, but we didn't actually go out for bids. So we are purchasing from Midwest Chemical. They were the lowest quote, and so so that we could do this for the next 3 months, we thought we should bring this forward to stay with Midwest Chemical, and in the interim, we will prepare a bid and go out to bid for the remainder of the year for this chemical.
I move we stay with Midwest.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a second by Mr. Jean. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all of those in favor of accepting the sole source for purchase of magnesium hydroxide chemical for the wastewater treatment facility can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are at the end. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Looks like I have a motion from Herbst and a second by Mr. Jean. All of those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.